Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Will-o-Wisp. Has anyone ever seen one in real life? If so, just curious what the experience was like. I grew up in a pretty swampy region with boggy, gassy ground, but never once saw anything like this. The only reason I know of it at all is pick-related, never heard the term locally. Closest thing I can think of is heat lightning. Dim lightning from a storm so far away it is silent, but is much more momentary and vertically oriented than depictions of wisps. What do you think is their significance?
The swamp gas thing is a lie. Saw one in a graveyard whilst ghost hunting with a group of about 8. I tried approaching it, it was greenish, and I dropped to my knees and started to vomit. When I looked up it was moving towards the forest in the back of the graveyard. We did not want to climb the fence and pursue it. A second one, this one white, shot between a friend's legs, and then went up about 4 feet into the air and then went straight down into a grave. At that point morale broke, it freaked out some of the noobs, and it was called a night. The green one definitely seemed like it wanted us to follow it into the forest, but I know my folklore.
I saw what I would call a will-o'-the-wisp before. I knew someone that saw the same thing in the same spot a couple years before. I heard the story when it happened and forgot about it. I had stopped by my cousin's neighbor's house to kill some time after work. I beat him home, so I was waiting for him in my truck. I glanced over and saw what I first thought was a LED streetlight shining through some acres of wooded area. I thought it was odd as I don't recall a streetlight being there. I leaned forward and back expecting a tree to block the light, and when it didn't, I realized it was a lot closer than I thought. It was about 20 yards away and maybe about 16 feet in the air over a shed. The metal roof of the shed was dimly reflecting the glow. I got out of the truck, walked closer, and it vanished. The light continued to reflect off the roof of the shed for a bit and then faded away. There was a direction to the light, similar to a diffused light from a flashlight, and it moved across the roof. The wisp glowed a light blue color and was about the size of a golf ball. The shed itself is a bit odd. It's attached to a chicken coop but has a small room filled with knickknacks. I feel like the light was curious about it. An acquaintance, Kyle, a couple years before had stopped by to feed the chickens while cousin was away and saw what I assume was the same light above the shed. He was much closer, parked next to the shed. He had filmed it, hopped in his car, then called his mom. His mom suggested throwing something at it. He tossed something at it from the car and the car shut off, motor and all. The video wasn't anything special. It was a shaky couple pixels of a white dot on a black background. He posted to Facebook, but the video was removed and he was warned not to post it again. I think it was more related to posting a video of nothing rather than Big Brother warning him. Kyle is an ass, and this was years ago, so I can't get the video.
Briefly saw a small Wispy One over a spot in the nasty stagnant retention pond near where I live. I was in a car and we were driving slowly and I saw it like a teal-green flame. It wasn't spectacular but still neat to see in real life. Nothing spooky or paranormal about it though. Just a type of cold fire. Sometimes swamp gas or cold flame really is all it is. In your case the sick feeling also fits with a dangerous gas. I've heard this described in regards to exploring underground structures. What was the airflow like where you were? If it was going against the flow of air, not with it, then I would agree that seems paranormal. If the air was damp and still and you were in a rather sheltered area, I'd think this might have been a natural gas phenomenon. It could really go either way. I've only encountered one once and I'd even say it is my only paranormal experience to date. However, the details around it could hold some questionable doubt, as me and my friends were essentially high in the woods under a canopy. We saw it glow, but it was so small and it lived for about 3 seconds until it disappeared. I somehow didn't have any takeaway or thought about it until a few years later when I mentioned it to one of my friends who I experienced it with. He recollected the same experience as I. Somehow we were put inside of a trance to just forget about it. That's what it feels like anyway, some weird entity. I have no thought on what its intentions were, and I have no idea the background lore surrounding this creature.
This is a story that my dad told me that happened to him many years ago. He was out kangaroo, shooting with 8 of his friends on a large property in southwest corner of New South Wales. It was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, so still very dark, when one of the guy's gun seized up or something, so they stopped the UDA so this guy could go around into the headlight and try and fix it. While the others were waiting, they saw something that not one of them could explain. A large ball of light appeared and bounced across the ground around them, completely lighting up the whole area as bright as day. Then it just bounced off into the bush. Out of the 9 there, 8 of them saw it. The only one who didn't see it was the guy fixing his gun in the headlight. A day or so later, the story of this strange light had got around town, and from their ABC News found out about it and reported a story on it. Most people say that it was the Min Min light, but it had never been reported in this area before and never since. But all I know is not one of the guys have been back to the area since, and not one of them will go again. The Min Min light is a mysterious Australian outback phenomenon. Best known manifestation of the Australian ghost light genre is the famous Min Min light. Hundreds of people over the years have told of seeing the Min Min light in the Boulia or Winton district. This is about 2,000 kilometers from where my dad and his friends saw the light. It has been reported high in the sky, at times oscillating up and down like a yo-yo. A frequent feature is that, unlike a headlight, it lights its surrounds on all sides. It appears to be a curious, friendly light, often approaching but never threatening, although at times causing panic in the minds of the beholders. If you talk to old-timers out there who had seen it and they were terrified by it, it's a bit embarrassing for them, because hardened outback men can be brought to tears by this thing. It really is quite alarming. Following the past holiday season that came just after my son was born, I've been filing through a lot of photographs and cell phone pictures, trying to put together a scrapbook and baby book. Going through them, I've noticed something interesting about quite a few that are just of Maddox. They have white wisps somewhere in the picture. They're all the same size, and they don't change consistency. They're all the faintest white wisps that look sort of like paintbrush strokes, identical in each photo. And not to sound cheesy, but this is the only way I can describe it, they have a sort of faint glow to them. Not like a noticeable bright, but they look like they're dimly lit up. It's hard to describe. Of course, I thought it was a camera malfunction or a reflection of the flash, but they're everywhere in pictures, so dark you can barely see what the pictures of, in light pictures, in both blurry and sharp pictures, on my cell phone, even on my mom's camera. There's dozens of them, and I've noticed more in pictures of him that I've taken on my phone even just in the past few days. I tried to get a picture onto my laptop to upload and put on here, but it's not an easy task from my phone. From what I've gathered, it's not usually a good thing when pictures are like this, so I'm kind of concerned.
We always loved taking the kids camping. One summer night under a warm, muggy clear night sky in 2011, the time was only an hour or 2 into sunset. We were walking across the campground to the lake, which has a pier across it that's 4 feet wide. I was gazing into the darkness of the woods beyond the lake, which was marshy with hardwoods and some pines and very few bushes. I began seeing what I thought were lightning bugs. As we began crossing the lake, I'm thinking that getting closer would help me finally catch it with my direct vision, as I had lucked out on with the first couple. I began thinking I can't follow them, which was an instant problem. All my life I have been accustomed to lightning bugs appearing in summer here in the south, and watching and following them with my eyes. I noticed that as I was trying to follow the bugs, I couldn't. Now keep in mind, my first glance was caught directly with my eyes, which turned immediately to peripherally noticing them. By this point I knew it was not lightning bugs and realized what I was seeing was ghost lights. I'd run across the term researching Halloween folklore and many other things the internet of knowledge can reveal a few years before. Anyway, there was an incredible number of flashing lights throughout the woods. They seemed to be bluish-white in color and were a pulse of magic in the darkness. There were more appearing in the first few feet off the ground than upwards. As I looked higher, they were not present. By now I'm scanning my eyes in all different directions and catching dozens pulsing. I brought it to the attention of my kids and their mother, who saw them. We did seem to see a similar light activity in the lake, but could have been reflections. I've also camped other times there and did not see them.
Wednesday morning, May 25, 2016. My girlfriend mentioned to me that she was going to go to Hanging Rock in North Carolina because she had never been there before. She typically is a very artistic person who likes to photograph nature and just enjoys silence and solitude. There have also been no other reports to my knowledge via Google that Hanging Rock has any supernatural presence. During our stay, we encountered more than just one. So that morning, I agreed to join her for the 2-hour drive up to Hanging Rock. When we got up there, we were in a very good mood from listening to John Denver and Fleetwood Mac. Shortly after entering the forest for the 1.3-mile hike to Hanging Rock, I began to get kind of cranky. Anyways, there was a little bit of distance between her and I, and we eventually climbed to the top of Hanging Rock on our own time, me being the last to get up there. At this time, it must have been around 7 or 8 p.m., but we had no idea because the sunset was just beginning to fall and we had left our phones in the car. As we began to sit atop that exact ledge in the picture, my angsty mood began to pull me towards the ledge. She asked me,
"Do you want to jump?"
"Yes."
"Me too."
We talked about our experiences with our thoughts, but the longer we stayed up there, the more she began to feel the pull to jump off, not necessarily because of death, but some sort of pull. Curiosity, she explained it. Well, my tendencies when with girls are to linger and cuddle, so I was in no rush to head back down, despite the fact that the sun was setting fast and the darkness was approaching. Despite the darkness coming down, I didn't even think twice about the fact that I would have to climb down the trail into the woods and walk the 30-minute walk back to the parking lot. I was relaxed at this point, but my girlfriend was starting to get sucked into looking off the edge, saying, "Don't let me jump." She wouldn't do it, she said, but she didn't trust herself. After all, she kept quoting that the reason why people are afraid of ledges aren't because they are afraid they'll fall, they are afraid that they'll jump. At this point, the sunset was beautiful and I still wasn't concerned, but her uneasiness was growing. She then saw a Will-o-Wisp. I was like, "What's that? Some sort of wasp?" She said no, she said it's like a firefly but bigger. About 20 minutes later, when we finally started coming to the realization that it was going to be pitch black for the majority of the hike down, we decided to begin heading back. This is when the feelings of uneasiness started to take over me. As we kept walking, she asked me if I knew what a Will-o-Wisp was. I said that I had no idea. She then told me that they are somewhat playful spirits that are known to catch travelers off guard and distract them into getting lost off the trail. Makes sense in hindsight that the Will-o-Wisp only caught her eyes and that it was dancing around the edge of the cliff on their side of where we were sitting. This is when I started getting spooked and my thoughts of death began to increase. We then realized that we were walking the wrong path down the mountain and had to quickly get back up to the top and rethink where the path was. I didn't want us to feed off of this fright because I was trying to convince myself that these feelings were just our own insecurities manifested in our own minds. This may be true, and I decided to tell my girlfriend despite hesitating that it was possible that someone had probably jumped off the ledge at Hanging Rock. I just thought that I wouldn't be surprised if someone had.
"Don't say that."
So we kept walking and her broken foot was starting to hurt her. The light was starting to go away almost completely as we had trouble finding places for our feet to step next. Slowly but surely we were getting closer to the bottom of Hanging Rock, just between the base of the cliff and the heart of the woods. From here we still had about 1 mile of walking to go through the pitch black woods. When we got to the base of Hanging Rock, I began to feel an overwhelming presence and goosebumps quickly raised all over my body. I felt tremendous sadness and my face began to reflect that of heavy despair. I started sniffling, I felt scared and on the verge of tears. The presence I felt was so angry about the experiences it missed. I could feel the presence of someone who died falling off that cliff or one nearby. Either way, it was there next to me, watching me and my girlfriend, but especially manifesting its energies onto me. I am a male, and believe this ghost was a male as well. As I kept walking, I felt completely and utterly helpless, as if the spirit had been trying to get me to feel the feelings it felt just before it died. Despair, anger from the sudden loss of all the opportunities he was pursuing. Complete anger and even some agitation about my presence. The agitation the spirit felt was strong, but its yearning to be understood was even stronger. At this point I was scared out of my mind. I kept walking though, and then all of a sudden my nose sniffling was getting worse. My girlfriend asked if I was okay. I said, yeah, but in truth I was feeling so helpless, the kind of helplessness that the ghost had felt near his death. And then I just started bawling. I just began to cry because the emotions I felt were so strong and obvious. I couldn't hold back the despair and my face began to just look like utter helplessness. The spirit seemed to be mildly pleased at my understanding of his encounter, but he was still angry nonetheless. And then I decided to look behind me. I looked over my right shoulder just barely, not even all the way around, and I saw him. A white boy about the age of 19 to 22 with short brown hair, a scarred bloody face with deep dark angry eyes and a white shirt. He had rock climbing gear strapped on his chest. I then looked forward, and as I kept walking away from the base of the cliff and further into the path ahead of me, which was lined with sand and straightforward, the spirit continued to follow me for a short while, slowly giving me more and more space. I could feel his eyes every now and then, but I could also feel him look away. There was no goodbye, but at one point he did leave me alone. My girlfriend did not feel him as much as I did. The pull that she had felt when we were at the top of the cliff was a different spirit, not the boy. But the boy reached out to me, and I liked that. There is more to the story. Some of the things that my girlfriend felt as we left the woods were more malicious than the boy. The spirits she felt were what were pulling her to jump off of Hanging Rock. I felt it too, but it knew that I had already made up my mind to not jump. In her case, not so much so that spirit took a liking to her. And as we left the woods, she felt it so strong, as black tentacles she described trying to pull us back into the woods. I still want to cry sometimes because of what I felt there. I still cry. And that was just 2 days ago that this happened.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.